Because some of them, you know, they say, oh, it's good to paint them up sometimes and change the colours and for the, you know, them to sort of see the different hives, but to identify them. But I've never had an issue with them with that, you know. So
No.
But
No,
yeah. The good thing about tonight, I just said to Tita before, I went, oh, colder, wet, they'll all be inside.
That's what I was thinking when I was
They'll all be
driving
calm. Like every other time we've done them, they've been crazy.
Yeah.
You'll probably find tonight with this temperature, that probably because we've normally done them, you know, in the afternoon, quite warm. You'll probably see some of them. Well, hopefully they're a lot less active.
So Daniel and Jasmine are friends of ours, and they've embraced our humble beehives into their lives. And so every year we go to visit them to split the hives. So the first thing that Paul is doing is just cleaning up the front of the hive, getting rid of the garbage pellets that the native bees have thrown out of their nest. Rearing the brood creates a waste product made up of different things left over by the larvae. And unlike the European honeybee, which leave the nest to defecate, the stingless bees actually defecate in their own nest. All of these wastes are bundled up and transported out of the nest in the form of a pellet. The native bees can often be seen removing the garbage pellets from their nests, and there are some worker bees that specialise as garbage removalists and are commonly visible during periods of high activity. They're carrying an orange to brown garbage pellet in their mandibles and they deposit it outside the nest. A lot of waste out the front of the nest is actually a good sign because it indicates that the colony is successfully rearing adults. So this is propolis. It's a mixture of resin and wax. The resin is collected from plants, but wax is produced by the bees themselves. The stingless bees, or the native bees, mix these two materials together to form propolis. This is the propolis that we harvested from these guys' native beehives last time we split the hives. You can harvest this propolis from the honey section of the hive. There's usually several forms of propolis and it's probably used inside the hive to insulate it. So we just use this blue plastic strapping to keep the whole hive together.
It's interesting, not one has come out of either yet, eh? Yeah, exactly. I don't want to go outside. It's pretty amazing that tape is still, you know, held pretty good. I had a friend who, because she didn't like the look of the tape, she had a stand for it, and she drilled through the stand or through the pipe into the top part of the hive and took the tape off and hung it from the top part. And I'm like, oh, these parts aren't joined, because she said, oh, it opened up and they all went out, and I'm like, yeah, well, no, you should have kept the tape on.
And we also use this cloth tape that goes around each of the layers of the hive to hold it together.
So there's some people that they get this, then they get your thick polystyrene, and will actually insulate the whole hive, and then just have the little hole with that, and then you could have them probably out somewhere like Roma, as long as they've got foliage and all the flowers to.
So to divide a hive, you just need to separate two sections of a complete hive and then couple each half with an empty half to create two complete hives from the original one. The original two halves provide the nucleus for each of the new colonies. The way we do this horizontally is a key feature of the oath hive box, which is oath stands for the original Australian Trigona hive. There is a huge demand for stingless bees as pets, pollinators, honey producers, and just for educational purposes as well. We get plenty of inquiries, always people looking to buy our hives. Paul's just using a little bit of propolis to seal up their hole the entrance hole. So the first thing to do after removing the tape is to separate the top and bottom sections of the hive or the box with a sharp tool such as an American hive tool or a heavy duty paint scraper. The bees try to stick all the hive layers together with propolis, so you might need to use a bit of effort to get them open. Once you've got it open, some people just pull them apart, but Paul's using an aircraft wire to basically cut the sections between the two halves. Because this beehive is actually the honey oath design, it's got the third section on top, which is actually the honey box or the honey super or the honey section, they call it. And so it's okay to cut through that part, but we wouldn't cut through the part where the bees have their brood, because we could damage that. So you wouldn't use the aircraft wire in the next section underneath. So this honey oath design basically encourages all the bees to go up to the top section, or the worker bees to take all the honey up to the top section of the hive. With this honey oath design though, it's not recommended that you move the honey at the same time as splitting the hive, because this places excessive stress on the hive. You're meant to wait at least a week after division before collecting the honey. And this hive, although it's really healthy, they haven't started really building their honey pots in that top section yet. So we will definitely be not harvesting any honey from this one today. When you are splitting your hives, the hive that has the full bottom section will not refill its honey section at the top for quite some time. It will take at least a year until that honey section is full, and that's in favourable conditions. The two bottom boxes in this honey oath design are the ones that actually house the bee brood. So when we extract the honey from the top section, there's ample reserves even after the honey has been taken out of the hive in those two sections down the bottom to keep the hive going. But we would only harvest the honey from the top section if there was plenty there to take. If you leave the honey there for the bees, if they're facing any tough times ahead, their survival is ensured. And now for the splitting of the second hive. These are tetragonula carbonaria hives, so they can be split usually every 12 months.
This will just give us an idea if there's a... Oh. Wow. Broke me wire. Put the old one in. I don't normally go in from the top, but I thought if we can have a quick look, that will then give us an idea of whether we take the honey out or whether we just split it. Yeah, same thing again.
It's empty.
Yeah, well, not empty. So these ones, see the structure?
Yeah.
See how it's different? So these are the, that looks like the tetragonula, the hocking side, which are a little bit more aggro.
Yeah.
So, so it's all good. So we'll, ow. Oh, that was that way.
So we will be able to get some out of that one? Or no, leave them?
No, I'll probably leave that one as well, because there's not much at all there.
So Australia has 11 species of Australian stingless bees, and there's 6 species in the tetragonula family, which is 2 of which are shared with Asia, and there's also the Ostroplebia genus or family, and that's got 5 species in Australia. So basically the bees have, they wait until they filled the whole brood box or the 2 boxes below for storing all their food before they start honey in the top box.
Oh, look at that. Perfect split.
Perfect one.
Yeah. Look at that. So see how none of that got damaged and it just split straight in half. So that's the bottom half of the brood and the bit that went in there is the top half. So that's a perfect split.
I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Good job. So the Tetragonula carbonaria and the Tetragonula hawkinsi are pretty similar in like their appearance, but their nest architecture differs. Here's how to use the strap and buckles to keep it all together.
So let me just get that to the centre. So put it through, fold it over, poke the tape through, hold that, feed that one up, fold that over, put it down through, and then pull both sides. And there you go. Be a little bit careful so that's another one done.
That's a freshie.
So it's a good sign that that there's the presence of propolis and those sorts of structures in the top starting. So it's a good sign that the space is being prepared for storing honey, but we just have to close the hives and wait.
Okay, fingers crossed. Oh yeah, we could probably get a little bit out of there.
Yeah.
It'll only be a small little jar, but at least you'll have some.
Keep the mother happy.
Yep.
You can name all your bee boxes.
These Australian native bees will normally make about 1 kilo of honey per year, if the conditions are right anyway. So if you are thinking about getting some Australian native stingless bees, they are excellent pets to have. They're generally pretty harmless to all humans and domestic animals, and they support conservation efforts. And because they contribute to our natural biodiversity, they are naturally present in many of our warmer areas in Australia, and they thrive in hot and wet climates. Sometimes when we've opened up the super, it's had lots of pollen in with the honey, and it becomes challenging to extract the honey without getting too much of the pollen mixed in with it. But when there's too much pollen mixed in with the honey, it's a very different taste. It's quite sour, and it's initially very cloudy, and later the pollen tends to float to the top and form a layer or crust on the top of the honey that not everyone will find attractive. And when the pollen is mixed all through the honey, it tends to go into a fermentation. Some people like it and some people don't, but looks like we don't have a lot of pollen in this one, so it should be relatively pure honey. And sometimes the honey foams when it's being extracted. The foam rises to the top like the head of a glass of beer. There's no doubt that this honey is at its most delicious when it's freshly removed from the hive. Once you've extracted your honey, you need to keep it cool, most likely in a refrigerator if you can. That's the best way to keep it for longer. The interesting thing about the Australian tetragonula species, unlike the European honeybees, which put their honey in pure wax, which is flavourless and odourless, the Australian tetragonula species use propolis instead of straight out wax, so all the honey is aromatic. It's got the flavour of whatever the bees are using to make their honey pots. So honey is just water and sugar basically. Everything else is less than 1%. But the thing is with Australian native bee honey, they don't ever meet the maximum water content permitted in honey because the water content is too high. So that makes it really hard to sell and buy Australian native bee honey, which makes it so expensive to get. That is nice. Sometimes I think I like them better than other times, and that one's a really nice one. So according to the Australian Native Bee Book by Tim Hurd, the honey of Tetragonula carbonaria has excellent antimicrobial properties, and it also rates really well compared to Manuka honey. Many beekeepers will just pierce the honey pots with some like a wire brush with nails coming out of it, and then they'll just turn the honey super box upside down and let it drain out itself rather than pulling out all the propolis and everything like this, like what we're doing here. But it can take 10 minutes for the honey to drain out doing it that way. The other thing is that all those little bees that are being stuck in the honey, some of them can actually recover after they've been covered in honey, and some people recommend giving them a little wash so that they can find it more easy to get the honey off them. So if you're using the other method of just piercing the honey pots and turning the super upside down and letting the honey drain out, you probably wouldn't have as much bee carnage as what we've got here today. Some bees obviously do die in the extraction process, but this is of little consequence to the colony because this is really insignificant compared to the thousands of losses that they would have when they have their natural fighting swarms. The good thing about us splitting the hives on this day was that it was quite cool weather compared to usual, and so all the bees move into the brood boxes underneath to keep warm and to help warm the brood, leaving the honey relatively free of bees.
Oh, that looks good. Oh, beautiful.